The term disability has been around for a long time, and it means different things to different people. The same way that people have used the word handicap, crippled, all sorts of terms have been used to describe people that seem to have a disability. So if you look at it more from an academic perspective, we've talked for years and years and years about the terms, whether the person is mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, a person with a mental disability, a person with a physical disability, etc. And eventually, in one of my textbooks, I finally came around and said, why don't we just try to coin the term people with disability? Not with a disability. They may have more than one. Disability doesn't limit you to a disease or an injury or a mental disorder or a mental illness. It's just a person with disability. There's nothing bad about it. It's politically correct. And I only use it when it's necessary to describe a particular situation or a particular person because they want to know something about the person. So I said, well, he is, if you'll recognize him, because he is a person with disability. But you and I could be walking around with a disability and you wouldn't know it. But person using a dog or a cane or in a wheelchair or walked funny or, or whatever have you, may have a disability. I never use the term. It just unless I need it for a specific purpose. I talk about people. Gary wasn't a person with a disability. No, he was a good friend. He was a buddy. We could go down White Avenue together and drink wine and look at the scenery. But he was just a person. And but if you needed to use the term for a specific reason, then it's fine. I don't think I will ever know what people with disability think, because I'm not disabled myself. I have a lot of handicaps, but I don't have disability from an intellectual and academic point of view. But there are many, many people who don't like the term handicapped and physically challenged. It came out in the 80s in the International Year of the Disabled on all those kinds of things. And I think the less we use the term, the better. But it's really interesting in that over the years, that's how the sporting movement, the Paralympic movement, made a huge impact on using terms and people with disability. Back in the earlier days of international sport competition for athletes with disability, because it could be others, they, if they were confronted by a family or because kids are very inquisitive and they'd be pointing and they'd be asking questions and mums and dads would scoot them away, or if they saw someone coming with a seemingly visible disability, they'd walk across the street and avoid it. And that was a problem for years and years until the whole Paralympic movement became a higher profile, and it was in our schools, in our curriculum, and it was in our governments, in laws, etc. So in 2000 we go to Australia. All of a sudden, down around Circular Quay where the beautiful ocean is and all the lovely buildings down in that area, all of a sudden the Opera House was there and there'd be 3 or 4 athletes sitting in their wheelchairs chatting. The kid from across the street would run across with his pad and want an autograph. And what sport do you play? I didn't ask him about his disability. He didn't, wasn't whisked away, but he wanted his autograph and he wanted to know what sport he played. Because that's how the movement started educating people. Look beyond the disability and what do you see? You see a person. And that's that's where it has to get to. But some people are still very uncomfortable with that at every level. Teachers are uncomfortable with it. Doctors are uncomfortable with it. Politicians are uncomfortable with it. The public is uncomfortable with it. Kids aren't. They just, our kids grew up in it, in an environment around people with disability. You know, some of their greatest heroes were people in using a wheelchair.